We are building a UX portfolio in just 7 days. There is not much more to add, so let's just start. The first day is about selecting the right projects for your portfolio and figuring out where and how you're going to build it. And let's start with the second point, so selecting the platform. And if we only have 7 days, realistically, we need to use Notion because this is the fastest way to do it. And I'll be using a free template that I've linked in the description to build this whole portfolio. You can copy this template and adjust it to your needs as you see fit, and you can make Notion pages public. You can even publish them as websites, so connect your own domain and index them at Google, so there is no problems there. And of course, if you want to build your portfolio on Wix or on Webflow or even build your own website from scratch, it's totally fine. But given that we're working with a 7 days time frame, I think this Notion template will be the fastest way to do it. Okay, so this part of the day was really quick. We're using Notion, and now let's move on to selecting projects. And for this video, I assume that you already have some UX projects that you want to put in your portfolio. If you're just starting, you're a total beginner, that's also fine, and you need to produce some projects, you can use some design briefs that I have on my website. They are totally free. The link is in the description. So, coming back to projects, there are some criteria that portfolio projects need to meet. Let's go through them right now so you can select good projects, high quality projects. First, your project needs to be complex enough. So ideally, the designs that you're showing in your portfolio are solving complex problems that were difficult to solve, that required a lot of iterations and thinking. So let's say that you have a very simple login page. This is probably not portfolio worthy. But on the other hand, if you have a project of a Kanban board with adjustable cards and multiple filtering and sorting options, this is already a portfolio worthy project. Next, this project needs to have high quality outcomes. So you need to be proud of what you've created, and if it turned out ugly and information architecture is incorrect or there's just something wrong with it evidently that you can see, maybe skip this project. The next criteria is following the correct design process. So basically all your projects need to go through all of the phases of the double diamond model, or almost all of the phases. So you need to start with some exploration, then do some research, then formulate the problems, go through low and high fidelity explorations, then do some usability testing, then work with data, etc. So it doesn't have to be perfect, like perfectly executed design process. We can fix it here and there, and we will talk about it in day 5, but it needs to have this core value. For every single project in your portfolio, you need to also ask yourself a question: if they were to see only this one project, would it get me hired? And you need to be really honest about it, because every single project needs to stand on its own. And if it doesn't meet the bar, next. And another question to ask yourself is, would you like to do more of this type of work? So for example, if you want to be a mobile app designer and you have a lot of mobile app projects, but you made one website some time ago, don't put it in your portfolio. It's better, even if you're missing high quality projects, it's better to create like a personal or a fake project of a mobile app than to put the website in your portfolio, because it is just confusing the recruiters, and you need to really focus on the direction that you want to grow your career in. Okay, so we know how to select the projects. Let's talk about how many projects do you need in your portfolio. I think it should be between 4 and 5. This is the most optimal number, because the idea here is that you need to show that you can execute high quality work repetitively. And if you have like 1, 2, 3 projects, it is not enough to show consistency. Between 4 to 5 seems to be optimal, that you can make sure that they see that you can consistently execute high quality work. For more than 5 projects, I would say we are going into the territory of showing all of your work, not necessarily your best work. And portfolio is a collection of your best projects, not all of your projects. So if you go over, it is not ideal. It's also a lot of work to create a case study, so there is a higher possibility that you will start cutting corners and lower quality of your case studies if you were to go over 5. 6 is okay. I wouldn't go really over that. And what kind of projects those should be? I think if you're building your very first general portfolio, you should have at least one iOS, one Android, and one desktop web app project. And then for the remaining 2, 3 projects, just mix whichever platform you prefer. And also I would include at least 3 big features. So for example, a calendar for an app, or a Kanban view for a task management app. This is an example that I'm using always. And I would also go with 1 to 2 whole products, so like a whole fitness app or whole recipe app. I dive deeper into this topic in my free 5-day portfolio masterclass, so if you would like to join, there is a link below. Day 2 is about building your very first case study. I prefer to jump straight into the projects and take care of the main landing page of the portfolio later on, because I find that the landing page is usually a bottleneck because you need to choose a color, you need to write a bio and choose your photo. So it's better to jump into the projects and then we will come back to the main landing page later on. And of course, to build this first case study, you're using the Notion template. And I will not go through the whole template in this video because it will be really time consuming, and I've already recorded a video about it, so I will link it here if you want to check it out. But I will share some, like, the most important pieces of advice, the highlights for building the very first portfolio. And just remember that building the very first case study is the most time consuming. So if you go through this one, the other ones will take shorter, like not as long, and they will be so much easier to build. The first one is to annotate your designs. So when you're pasting mockups into your case study, make sure to add some arrows and highlight some elements, maybe add short descriptions around it, maybe add pieces of the flow around the mockup so people know what they are looking at. Even though you have a title of a section and then a paragraph above the mockup, trust me, they may not read it, so if you annotate your designs, it is so much better. Next, shorten your text. I recommend having super short pieces of text in your portfolio, maybe 3 to 4 lines for every paragraph. And if you have longer text, split it into shorter paragraphs. Or do one of my favorite things, so use bullet points. And also, every single bullet point should be short. It shouldn't be a paragraph inside of a bullet point, if that makes sense. Bold out some keywords in your paragraphs and in your bullet lists, because people don't usually read, they scan through your portfolio, and your portfolio needs to be ready for scanning and selective reading. This is what I always say. So speaking about selective reading, if you have some content in your portfolio text-wise, also make sure that it makes sense, it contributes value, and it can stand on its own when people select to just read this one part. And the last point is about how you present your research. So do not add full usability testing scenarios and rainbow sheets of your results and maybe even recordings. I've seen that as well. Just keep it really short, state the points, so what kind of improvements you will make after the research, maybe task list for usability testing and hypothesis that you had for the research. Day 3 is about personal brand. We're taking a little break from creating case studies and we're focusing on expressing our personal brand in the portfolio. And only because you're using the template, it doesn't mean that it has to stay this way. It's pretty bland, it's pretty generic, and as it's supposed to be because it's a template. And you can add some accents and some personal touches to it to make it more your style, I guess. First, let's think about bio. You need to state what kind of designer you are, who you worked with, who you would like to work with, what kind of projects you're interested in, what kind of value you can deliver. So anything that will help people identify, yes, this is the person that I would like to work with. You can also choose a niche for yourself. So for example, if you're a mobile designer or a SaaS designer, or you specialize in design systems, this is the place to mention it. Even if you're a junior designer, and you don't have a niche yet, just keep it in mind for the future. And I've prepared a couple examples for you of the good bios, in my opinion. I will share them on the screen and you can screenshot each of them, just stop the video and screenshot, because the worst thing is to be left with a blank slate and figure out, should I say this? Should I say that? Maybe this sounds stupid. Maybe this is too obnoxious and judgy. I don't know. So those are good templates that you can then build on top of. The idea is in general to be quite value driven. So for example, you focus on improving retention, or you focus on simplifying complex flows based on research, etc. And also to show your specialization if you can. So as again, if you're a mobile designer or a SaaS designer, let's mention that. And I would like you to try to avoid quite generic descriptions like this one, for example. I'm a UX, UI designer passionate about creating intuitive digital experiences. Like every single designer is. I specialize in user-centered design. as every other designer, and I'm eager to collaborate on innovative projects that prioritize seamless user interactions. What the hell does that even mean? But there are so many portfolios who have statements like this, and it's not, it's not incorrect, but at the same time, it's just so many words, but it says nothing. Oh, and also when you're modifying those descriptions, I know that many of you will probably go to ChatGPT and ask about, hey, write me like 10 propositions for that. You can do it for sure, but keep in mind that it will just give you a lot of those generic descriptions. So filter through the outcomes, the outputs that it gives you, okay? And I also know that many of you are junior designers, so you will not be able to maybe list who you worked with or your specialization, and it's totally fine. This one is not generic, but it is a very general one that is good to start with. So if you don't have anything specific to add to your description, you can go with, I'm a product designer who helps teams implement user feedback strategies that drive iterative improvements, ultimately increasing overall product usability. It is fine. It is not super detailed or focused on a particular thing, but it's also not one of those generic descriptions that's like, okay, every designer is like this. So this one I would start with and build on top of if you're a junior designer who's just starting. I would recommend adding a photo or an avatar to your portfolio. I know that you don't want to be like judged by your looks, but on LinkedIn, people will still see your photos. Like we live in a time where it's hard to hide your appearance, actually. So I think it's okay to add a photo to your portfolio. I would recommend something not as official. So for example, you smiling on the colorful background or you doing your favorite hobby. That would be great. You in a suit in like a corporate position, probably not the best choice. And we're at day 4. It's time to add remaining case studies to your portfolio. So basically you need to do whatever you did for case study number 1. We can even copy it and just be changing the elements. And I have a couple more points to share with you as you progress through this work. First, make sure to introduce your projects properly. I can't believe how many designers actually start their portfolio case studies from the middle, sort of, or assuming that people have some context about the product or project. Maybe it's because it's difficult to take a step back and see our case studies through the eyes of someone who has no clue, but we should be doing it. Describe the product and the topic of the case study. So for example, if you're adding a new flow for an existing calendar app, make sure to introduce this calendar app first, describe what it does, maybe add a couple of screenshots just to help people understand, okay, this is what we're working with, and then focus on the topic of the case study. So the topic of this case study is to add this new flow, and this is why we're working on it. Just a super simple intro, but it gives a lot of context to the viewers, and you would be surprised how many times it is missing from the case studies. Add basic metadata for the project. So the year it was created, the team who worked on it, and I'm not saying add names, it's more about adding specializations. So for example, 3 engineers, 1 PM, 1 designer, whoever worked on it, and also define your role a little bit more in detail. So if you were the only designer working on it, or maybe you were responsible for just some parts, maybe you collaborated with someone, add those details so it's clear from the beginning and you don't have to explain things during the recruitment process. Also list goals for your project. So for example, increasing monthly active users or provide a way for people to export data to a certain format. So if you were to work, for example, on a food delivery app, the goal will not be to create a food delivery app. This is a solution to a problem. And the goal would be to facilitate ordering takeout late at night, for example. Again, more information about goals in free 5-day portfolio masterclass. In this video, we are not touching on everything because it would be a 3-hour video. And as you're creating those case studies, make sure that you're not over-explaining the process. So for example, if you're presenting usability testing, don't go over, I've sent emails, I recruited participants, I performed the tests, and then I took notes. This is just obvious, and unless you did something unusual there, so sourcing of participants, for example, was unusual, there is no need to cover that in every single case study. A good test to see if you're over-explaining the process is if you're copying descriptions between the case studies. If you're doing it a lot, you're probably doing it wrong. It's better to focus on the outcomes of the activities, decisions that you've made, the results of the testing, for example, instead of focusing on explaining what low-fidelity exploration is. It's day 5, we are almost there. The next step is to polish our case studies. So we need to review everything in the case studies, make sure it flows really well, all the texts make sense, and that we've annotated all the designs. So basically make sure that everything is on point. Then I recommend that if you've skipped some parts of the process in your case studies, you can try to add them now. So for example, let's say that you forgot where your sketches are, your low fidelity exploration is for a project. You can try to reproduce it right now and still add it to your portfolio. It's totally fine. And please don't use hand-drawn sketches, like the photos of hand-drawn sketches. They are usually not a good quality material. Try to use digital sketches. You can use Excalidraw. I will link it in the description. And also there is a video that I've created some time ago that you can watch about using Excalidraw for digital sketches for UI design. Or for example, if you've skipped usability testing for your personal project, you can still perform it and go ahead and modify your case study. It is not a lost cause. You can always try to save a case study. Another thing to do is to add metrics and measuring success section to the end of your case studies. So if it was a real project, you can list what metrics you've impacted and how. So for example, monthly active users, weekly active users, maybe the completion rate for a flow or lowered the error rate, etc. Just before adding this information to the case study, make sure that your client or your manager agrees to it, preferably in writing, so for example, in an email. And if it was an example project, so a portfolio project, or you simply don't have access to those metrics, it's totally okay to list what kind of metrics you would measure, how you would measure the success of the project. The main idea here is that to show that you are thinking about metrics and thinking about impact and thinking about validating your work. And one more thing that you can add to the end of your case studies is the future vision. So how you would envision V2 and V3 of this project, maybe a 2-year plan for the project, maybe the things that you would test or do or add to the UI if you had more time. It is a really good way of showcasing your creativity, even if in those simple case studies. We are at day 6 and it is time to work on our thumbnails and project descriptions, so things that are visible on our project list. And when it comes to thumbnails, of course, you can simply show the UI that you've created, so the final project or the part of the final product that you've created, but I encourage you to be a little bit more creative here and make some enhancements to the thumbnails. For example, you can show a digital sketch and the ready UI side by side, or even cut them in half and show this little transformation. Or you can take out some elements of the designs like menus or buttons, make them slightly bigger and maybe put them outside of the frame of the UI. So it doesn't have to be an accurate representation of your UI. It is more of a creative interpretation, I would say, in a thumbnail that is meant to encourage people to click. I usually say that Dribbble is not the best place to go when you're a UX designer, especially not to build your portfolio, but it is an excellent place to get some inspirations for thumbnails because people there, they're doing a great job creating thumbnails for UI designs. So let's take a look at some screenshots that I've taken for you, so it's maybe easier for you to visualize what I've just described previously. So for example, you can extract some elements and put them in a grid, or maybe you can move things around or put your designs diagonally. There is a lot of creative freedom there. Those are just some examples, but definitely explore on your own. And then next to a thumbnail, there will be a title and a short description. And for titles, I will definitely keep it simple. So for example, Kanban board for a task management app or a fitness app for busy entrepreneurs. And then add a name of the company that you've created it for. Some people also approach it more value-wise. So for example, increasing monthly active users by 20% by improving a post sign-up onboarding. And it's totally valid, especially if you have some really strong results to be proud of. I would go with descriptions like this. With titles like this. And in a description, you can include a little bit more details to give people a taste of what this project will be about. And let me read you the title and the description of one of my own projects from my portfolio. So title is Source Graph, so the name of the company, Code Insights, Detect and Track. So this is the feature that we've introduced. And then the description says, introducing a new type of code insight based on a regular expression capture group that creates data series automatically to track versions of languages and patterns. So it explains what the project is about and what this feature does in an essence. And also in the description, you can add this value-driven factor, so what we talked about, improving monthly active users or reducing some kind of metrics or improving some kind of metric, that was important for the project. And it's day 7, we are almost done, and now we're gonna focus on reviewing, publishing, and testing your portfolio. So when it comes to reviewing your portfolio, I recommend to give it yet another really good read to make sure that you've covered everything, and then you need to show it to people. And preferably you will be showing it to your designer friends, so people who are in the industry, and they can potentially catch some errors. That would be the most valuable. And if you don't have access to anyone like this, you can definitely share your portfolio on LinkedIn, maybe on some LinkedIn groups for designers. Some people may give you feedback. Of course, they're not going to be obligated to give you feedback or give you good, high quality feedback. So don't implement blindly everything that they say. But I think if something will be like a repeating piece of feedback, you can consider changing this thing in your portfolio. You can also reach out to some designers on LinkedIn directly, maybe from your area. But also, if you don't have a relationship built with this designer, don't be too demanding. Just ask them politely, like, hey, would you mind taking a look at my portfolio? This is my story. I'm trying to get into UX. Some people will respond. I would respond probably a couple years ago for sure. And maybe they will give you some feedback. So don't count on a lot. Don't expect them to do it. But if you ask nicely, or if you have a relationship with someone before, that's totally an option. I also offer portfolio reviews as one-on-one coaching sessions. So if you would like to sign up for one of those, there is a link in the description. And I'm also thinking about creating office hours. So time for us every single month or maybe bi-weekly, where anyone can submit their portfolio. There will be a queue, of course, and we will review it publicly. So it would be a public Zoom meeting that everyone can join, basically. They would be able to collaborate, maybe ask questions, and definitely benefit from the review that we're doing. Maybe I will also record it and put it on YouTube. It's just an idea, but if you've watched so far, you're definitely like a community member. So let me know if you would be interested in something like this in the comments. And of course, at the end of the day, the biggest test will be whether or not you're getting responses from your job applications. So if you're applying for jobs and you're getting the interviews, great, your portfolio seems to be fine. If you're not getting the replies from the jobs that you should be getting replies from, so the jobs that are on your level, so if you're a junior designer from junior jobs, maybe there is something in your portfolio that you can improve. Oh, and I didn't explain that to publish your Notion site, you can simply click publish in the top right corner, or you can even add your own domain and index it on Google. So I will link all the docs from Notion in the description as well, so you can use them and go through the whole flow that they explain there. Okay, we are done with our 7-day portfolio sprint. If you enjoyed this video, you will definitely like this one about the portfolio that will not get you hired. So what mistakes to avoid. Remember to join my free 5-day portfolio masterclass and let me know in the comments if you would like me to open those office hours for portfolio reviews. Those would be definitely for free, and I think with unlimited people who can join. So definitely beneficial for all of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.